Welcome to session 2 of our 4-part series, kvCore Spring Fling, brought to you by Leaders Edge Network. Today, let's dive into Core Present. The purpose of our kvCore Spring Fling is to help you take advantage of the excitement and energy of spring, clean out the cobwebs in your kvCore, and really get going with some of the incredible functionality and very specific components of this great technology platform. Remember, this is part of your $85 monthly tech and education fee with EXP, and it is jam-packed with value. Keep in mind that you are with a virtual brokerage with EXP, one that is rooted in strong technological platforms that are designed to help you do business easier, faster, and better, and to give you greater credibility with your clients. We've talked about how to plant seeds in this spring market by creating a monthly newsletter, to go out to your clients, to go out to your sphere, to go out to a networking group perhaps that you work with. Now what we're really going to dive into today is CMAs, comparative market analysis, and how you can leverage, again, this amazing technology to take your CMAs to the next level. Before I show you next level with a platform embedded in kvCore called Core Present, I want to show you the basic functionality that kvCore can offer you. And if you're not using kvCore for your CMAs, you're probably using something comparable, whether it's your local MLS that provides it, maybe you use a third-party app. But let me show you the basic CMA Builder in kvCore. The way that you're going to get to it is from your main dashboard on the left-hand side, find Marketing, and then you'll go into All Marketing to get to this dashboard with all of these marketing tiles. Simply scroll down, find CMA Builder, and click Get Started. To build a basic CMA, I only have to provide 2 pieces of information to kvCore: the name of the person I want to prepare it for, and an address of the property that I want to analyze. Notice that it's not asking me any questions at all about the property other than the property address and, if applicable, an apartment number. And you're simply going to click Build the CMA. In a matter of seconds, based on just those couple of criteria, I'm going to have a CMA that I can download. And you'll see that it's ready. I'm going to go ahead and click here. Let's give it a moment, and we're going to see the CMA open. Again, this all happened in a matter of seconds. So what is the product that I'm receiving? Well, it's going to be branded to me and to EXP based on all of the information I entered in my kvCore profile from the start. Then it's going to give me some information about the property. I entered an address that I know happens to be for list in my local market, 1704 Wood Hollow, and it's giving me some valuation information. But you'll notice right off the bat there's a couple of things that jump out. There are no bed or bath listed, and there's no place for me as the agent to go back and correct or edit that in this CMA Builder product. If I continue to scroll down, I will get some of that touchy-feely, interactive, if you will, component that I'm looking for, where sort of those conversation starters. I'll see a map of recent sales. I'll get some graphing of recent sales prices. I'll even get a list of properties by address, right? And then I can take a look more deeply at more historical data. But this is where the CMA stops in the basic CMA Builder in kvCore. There's nowhere that I can click on this. There's nowhere that I can zoom in on this. There's no interactive element that we see in so much of technology today. This analysis will go to my client, whether it be a buyer or seller, in PDF form if I'm sending it in email, or I can print it out on a color printer and hand them a paper report if I should choose. But that's where the technology ends. Now let's take this same concept, wanting to be able to deliver a clear, concise, thorough picture of the market to our buyer and seller. Let's take this same property, 1704 Wood Hollow, and let's see what Core Present can do. So to get to Core Present, we're going to start back at our kvCore dashboard on the left-hand side, find Marketing, And then rather than go into all marketing, you can go directly to Core Present by clicking here. When you do that, you'll notice that a whole separate window or tab is going to open in your internet browser. You're still going to be logged into kvCore. You can easily hop back over to your main dashboard. Then you can toggle right back over to Core Present. Understand that there are a few additional things that you can do within Core Present to finalize and round out your profile for CMA building. That should be done here on the Core Present tab, not here in the kvCore tab. Those things that you can do from a profile standpoint are all covered in some of my other kvCore trainings available on our Leaders Edge YouTube channel. What we're really going to talk about today is the nuts and bolts of building your CMA with Core Present. Ultimately, you'll see as we move through this, you're going to end up with a market analysis that not only can stand on its own with great technological features, functionality, and interactive capability, but that you can then take that product and insert it into a listing presentation, into a buyer presentation, to even further extend that sort of technological wow factor with your clients. But where we're really going to zone in today, like I said, is on building the actual CMA. This is the spring fling. So to do that, you can go into one of two places, either win the listing or win the offer to start that CMA build. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead into win the listing. Once I do that, kind of like with that basic builder, the first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to be prompted for an address. So I'm going to go ahead and start typing in my address, same address we've been working with, 1704 Wood Hollow. Google Maps will come to my rescue again, and I'm going to find my local property in Marlton and select it. Then I'm going to hit next. Here's the first big difference already from what we saw previously. I'm going to, right off the bat, have the opportunity to double check a couple of pieces of information about this property before we move forward. This is not a single family property. It's trying to pull in information from the MLS, but it's asking me to validate it. This is actually a condominium. So I'm going to go ahead right here, click on the field, and select condo. I also know that this is a 2-bedroom, not a 1-bedroom condo. So I'm just going to click right in this field, go ahead and up it to 2. I know that the square footage is accurate and the year built is accurate. So now that I'm content with those 4 criteria, I'm going to move on to next. This is where things get really interesting, where you as the agent are going to want to spend a good amount of time recognizing that unlike that basic build, you have the ability to guide this ship, to customize, to modify, to extend parameters or to restrict parameters on what properties you pull in to your market analysis. So let's take a closer look. So for my property on Wood Hollow, once I either confirm or modify those 4 initial criteria, I'm looking at this map. The map is going to initially set itself to certain default criteria for creating this radius and for pin plotting certain properties on the map. You'll notice up at the top of the map, it's going to tell me what the comparable criteria is currently. Understand, you're going to have the ability to change any of these criteria to what you think would best suit the CMA. Right now it's set to find condos with 2 bedrooms. It's going to give a square footage range based on 20% up or down from my current square footage of just shy of 1,100 square feet. It's also going to default to pull in properties of any age. So despite the fact that my property is about 30 years old, it will pull in properties that are 50 and 70 years old and also pull in properties that are brand new. And it's also going to tell me what has happened in the market in the last 6 months. If I scroll down just a little bit so that you can see the legend below the map, this is where those pinpoints gain more explanation for you. Unfortunately, in the market that we're in, you're going to see very few blue pinpoints because they all represent coming soon. You'll also find very few actives because so many properties go practically right from list to pending. You will see some pendings, those are the orange, and you will obviously see the solds, those are the red. When you take a look at the map, you'll notice that some pinpoints are simply outlined in their legend color, while other pinpoints are that solid color. If it's a solid color, what the program is telling you is that that property is pulling into this CMA. If it's grayed out with just a color outline, then that means that property is currently excluded from the CMA. But how do you know what each of these properties is? Well, this is where that interactive technology boost is going to start to make a play. Let's take a look at this one pinpoint here. It's got an the orange-yellow outline, so it tells me that it's pending, but it's gray, so it tells me it's not currently in my analysis. If I click on it, it's going to start to give me a little bit more information. It's going to tell me the address of the property, the list price, when it went up to list, the number of bedrooms, and the size. So here's the reason that it's grayed out. Number one, my criteria was 2 bedrooms. This is 3. And number 2, it's 31% larger. So in this case, I'm happy with keeping that out of my analysis. Not really a comparable product to be able to look at evaluation criteria. Maybe what I want to do though is take a look at this radius. Maybe I don't want to be where I'm set right now, if you look at the map, to a 1 mile radius. Maybe I want to constrict that radius, or maybe I'm in a location where lot sizes are large and you only see a house every half mile. You might want to extend your radius. So let's take a look at what happens if I shrink it down to half a mile. You'll see that my radius does indeed come in closer and tighter on the property. And to help you see that even a little bit more, I'm going to zoom in on the map to give a little bit more separation between the properties that are pulling into this analysis. So take a look. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 properties that are within my radius that are red that have sold. I have an active match here, which is our green pinpoint, which is also the point where you'll see a little orange house, which is our subject property. I can click on any of these properties. So for example, if I take a look at Ravens Row, if for some reason I felt like this property was not meant to be part of our analysis, then I could simply click Remove from Comps. And if I do that, you'll notice that it's going to go ahead and change that pinpoint from solid to gray, and it will no longer be reflected in my analysis. Now I'm down to 5 sold matches. If I realize that was a mistake or I rethink my logic, I can simply go back to that pinpoint and add it back in. Okay, so now it's red again, and my sold matches are back up to 6. And again, I can go back and zoom in. I can move the map around so that I can see different areas, take a look at different streets to really hone in on what I feel is a full and comprehensive explanation of what's happening in this market for this type of property for my buyer or my seller. In addition to being able to take a look at the pinpoints and make edits there, I also have the ability to either click overhead on any of these criteria to make a change, or I can use these criteria tiles on the left-hand side to do the exact same thing. Let's say, for example, with year built, I didn't want to pull in properties of any age. I can simply click on the plus sign, and I can click on this Change Year Range. So right now it's recognizing that my property was built in 1982. If I click on the range, it'll give me a from and a to. So maybe I'm willing to pull in anything that was built from 1975 to 2022. Once I'm satisfied with that, I can click the check mark, and the results will automatically refilter on my map based on how I updated that criteria. You probably aren't going to see the impact of that criteria change because number one, my radius is so small, half a mile, And number two, I know that almost all, if not all of the condos in this geographic, half-mile radius area all meet that criteria. So I'm not, by value of that criteria, excluding any properties from the results. What may expand my results is if I take a look at close date. Let's say I don't want to limit myself to the last 6 months. Maybe I want to go to the last 9 months. Now, clearly in the market that we're in, this could be a little bit challenging because where we are today is different from where we are 60 days ago, 90 days ago, 6 months ago. Okay, with the continual constriction of inventory, prices have continued to go up. So it's got to be you and your professional determination of whether you want to expand beyond the most previous 6 months of data. But for purposes of showing you how to build a CMA, markets change, times change, and there may be a compelling reason why you would want to pull in 9 to 12 months of data. As soon as I make that change here in the criteria, it will automatically reflect the change on my map, and you'll notice how it's going to update my results, my sold results. It's pulled in an additional 3 matches because I went ahead and expanded my close date an additional 3 months. I could also do the same thing with any of these other criteria, beds, square footage, and so forth. If I knew of a specific MLS listing that I wanted to reflect here, maybe I was dealing with a historical property, a very unique property. Maybe it's on the water. Maybe it's significant in size or significant in price point or some unique feature that really makes it challenging to be able to compare it to other properties in the local vicinity or in a local development. Maybe what I want to do is be able to pull in other very specific properties in a broader market, in a broader geography, to help show value and to help generate a market analysis. You can do that as well here by entering the MLS ID and clicking on the blue arrow to import that data into your CMA. So already, just as we're still in the build phase, see how much more we can do here than we were able to do with that Basic Cma Builder. So again, if I wanted to make any changes to any of these pinpoints, I could simply click on them, add them, or remove them. If I wasn't sure, if this information just wasn't enough for me to make a decision about whether to add or remove it, let me go ahead and click on more information and show you what happens. Now I'm going to actually get the full Rolodex view. I'm going to get all of the photos from the MLS, and I'm also going to get all of the detail from the MLS, including the full description that's available about this property. So this could further assist me as the agent, as the builder of the market analysis, to determine whether I want to include this property or not in my CMA. When I'm done viewing it, I can simply X out of it, and then I can go ahead and make that decision. Do I want to remove it? No. This is a Wood Hollow property in the development that I'm looking at, totally within my criteria, less than 10% larger. This belongs in my CMA. So I'm simply going to X off and I'm going to leave it in. Now we're ready for the next step. So we've refined our criteria. I think I'm content with pulling in the 9 sold, 1 pending, 1 active, and I want to see what the next step produces. So let's move on. The great news as I decide to move on to the next phase of my CMA build is that I know if I needed to or chose to, I could always go back. Simply by clicking the back button, I could get back to this screen, get back to this criteria, and offer further modification. So it's not like once this is set and I move on, there's no going back and I'd have to start completely from scratch again. It's absolutely not the case. So move on with confidence until you've been able to experiment and experience this product a little bit. To move on to the next step, you simply come down here to the right-hand corner and you're going to click on Next. Now, for you in the editing stage, in the building stage, you're going to get a few things all on this one screen. But what's going to be really cool for your user is that your user will get this in multiple screens. First, they're going to receive what I describe as a price line, which is kind of like an outline, but instead of having dates like a timeline would, it's going to have price points to talk about sales price. Okay. The other component that they're going to get as part of their market analysis is a market assessment, which is going to look something like this, all tile driven. And clearly, I think in so much of the technology that we see today, and it doesn't have to be real estate technology, it could be any technology, so much with apps, with websites, and with other technology platforms, so much is tile driven or button driven, that with a simple click, sort of you get this explosion of information or access to data. This is going to be very much in that vein, the way that these tiles are set up with this CMA. But let's go back and really understand how this is built and how you here, still at this build stage, have the ability to customize and refine the criteria to make it meaningful to you and your clients. So at the very top, you'll have an understanding that it's going to remind you the property that you're working for, 1704 Wood Hollow. It's also going to give you a legend again, okay? It's going to help your user understand what do the colors mean so that they don't have to keep going back and forth to different screens to remember. And it's also going to remind us of the criteria that we are using as the agents to build this analysis. So let's take a look at the price line, what it's doing. Realize that in this market where we're challenged for data because there's so little inventory, that what you see on this price line could prompt you to go back and say, I want more data points on my timeline. I'm going to hit the previous button. I'm going to go back to that criteria and I'm going to make some further revisions. I'm going to go back into this next screen so that I can show you more of what all of this means on this price line. What the price line will do is it will, above the price line itself, it will identify the most recent sold, the closest sold, and the highest sold, okay? If you have sufficient criteria to produce those three results. Same goes with your actives and your pendings, with your green and your orange properties. The most recent, the closest, and the highest priced, okay? Because we have a limited amount of data, given the market that we're in, you're not going to see a large number of points on this price line. But it is pointing out among the solds, your most recent sold, which also happens to be the highest sold, and the closest. And by closest, I mean in proximity to our subject property. The other thing that this analysis is doing below the price line is it's giving us some averages. The average price of actives, of pendings, and of closed, okay? Which is again aimed to give valuable visual information to your buyer or seller to help them see exactly plotted on a graph, if you will, how different groupings of properties based on their status look in the marketplace today. You have the ability as the agent to continue to further modify this view for your client. You can click on Review Results, that's step one, and you'll notice that right now we have all of these red points. If you remember my criteria from the previous screen, it's reminding us here that we found 9 solds, 1 pending, and 1 active. Right now, only the starred properties are appearing on the price line. So 1905 Wood Hollow is appearing, but 2103 Wood Hollow is not. Maybe because I'm only talking about really 10 or 11 properties in total. What if I went ahead and starred all of the properties so that all of these properties could be visible on the price line? I'm just going to simply scroll through, since there's only 10 of them, click on all the stars, and then click out. And now look what happens to my price line. Now I'm going to see every property plotted, and it will still remind me of the closest and the most recent, which also happens to be the highest priced, but it will show all these others as well. This gives even more detail and builds, broadens, and affirms that sort of visual experience for the buyer or seller who's trying to understand your advice and recommendations for either pricing a listing or making an offer in the market that we're in. That is review results. Maybe if I go back and decide I don't want all of these properties reflected on this price line, I can click right back into it and unstar any of these properties. And as soon as I unstar them and X out, it will remove them. Understand that as your buyer or seller receives this analysis, they will have the ability to click on any of these points on the price line and see detail. They'll be able to see the photos, and they'll be able to get all of those criteria and descriptive details that are published on the MLS. So they'll be able to do that in two different places: the map, which was our previous screen with the pinpoints, or here with our price line and our property plottings. Okay. The other thing that you can edit, if you go to number 2, is you can edit trends. So I showed you how at the bottom of the price line we were highlighting averages. You can continue to highlight other trends or remove those trends from your price line. So maybe you didn't want to trend active properties, average price, you can remove it. Maybe you wanted to highlight the highest price. So let's go ahead and remove average price and go ahead and click on highest price. Maybe what you're trying to demonstrate to your clients is how important it is to come up with a competitive offer to be somewhere in the range of the highest as opposed to the middle of the pack of the average. Again, you're the professional making decisions and benefiting from being able to edit this criteria. Another thing that you can do with item 3, all still in this edit phase, is you can update your CMA to include and highlight certain features. To do that, I can simply turn on the features selection, and then I can say, go ahead and identify which properties have a pool, or maybe tell me which properties have a deck, which properties are on the second level. So let's say, for example, we wanted second level properties. I can go ahead and click on the 2, X out, and then let's take a look at our price line and see what it does. Okay, here it's going to show us information about 2-level properties. Let's take another look. Let's say features. Instead of choosing 2-level, we choose properties with a swimming pool. And again, X out, and it'll give us some detail information, again, below the price line, giving us averages for properties with a pool or with access to a pool, as would be the case in this condo development. Okay, if I decided that that really did or did not, add much value or change the story of my CMA, then maybe I just decide I want to turn that off, which is easy enough to do simply by toggling it back off. That's features. The next thing that you have the ability to do, which I think is very powerful in the world today, especially given the Zillow and Realtor.com access that is sort of people's starting point in real estate. So if Zillow estimates my property to be worth this, it must be true, right? Or if Great Aunt Edna values my property to be this, it must be true. Or my dad, who I never discount his advice, tells me my property is worth this, so it must be true. Here with estimates, you have the ability to add pinpoints to the price line based on whatever criteria this is. So let's say I'm looking at the Zillow estimate. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and type in, my description is Zillow estimate, and then I'm going to put in a price. Maybe Zillow says that my price should be $175, and I just click on the add button. Okay, so once I see it grayed here, when I click on the X out, look what's going to happen. It's going to add a pinpoint to my price line below the price line where the other estimates and averages appear to show that Zillow estimate. Same thing if I wanted to go back and, okay, let's take a look. Let's say Dad's best guess. And let's say Dad, because he wants the best for his, children, is going real high with the market with 200,000. So notice I had to click the add button. Once I do that, if I X out and go back below my price line, now not only do I have the Zillow estimate, but I have Dad's best guess. So now the client is going to have an even greater visual of how, their loved one or that sort of other professional estimate that they might be relying on, how that compares to the actual closed data, to the actual pending data, and to the averages that exist based on market conditions today. This is going to help you as the real estate agent drive the train, tell the story, guide your client so that ultimately they end up with the most competitive list price or the greatest value in an offer, depending on which end of the market they're working from as a buyer or a seller. Okay, so again, all of that functionality I can update or manage right through these tiles at the top. If I wanted to go back, let's say with the trends, and just remove some trends, remember I can do that here. And I can also go back into features, and I want to remove that pool. Maybe I decided that I didn't like that. So I just wanted to remove that pool pinpoint. Same thing too. Maybe I'm going to leave the Zillow estimate, but we're going to leave off Dad's best guess. I can simply go back, remove it, close out of the screen, and my price line will be updated. Okay, so this ultimately is what the client will see, but from this standpoint now in the moment, this is where you have the ability to build. So let's keep going. Let's now understand what happens when we take this price line. So now we've got an incredible, intuitive, interactive map. We've got a price line where a client can click on these properties to see pictures and detail, further visualization of what's happening in the market, what's available at different price points. Now we're going to take it to the next level, to the tiles, to even expanding and further educating our clients on what these things mean in the market today. So still working on my CMA build for 1704 Wood Hollow, you'll see that each of these tiles, if I click on it, is going to add further functionality. And again, as I stated previously, further tell your story. So as I take a look, remember the first tile that I clicked on here, average monthly list. So the average list price of all the properties reflected on our price line is $184,600. So let's take a look at even drilling down on that a little bit further. When I click on that tile, it's going to show me by month how average list price compared to average sale price. So when you have clients that are determined to come in for a bargain basement buy, this would be an amazing graphic to be able to show them why that's probably not a good idea. Okay, especially the further that you get, look at February having no data. Then you get into March where you're starting to see a little bit of inventory, and then April, and look how sales price has overtaken list price, okay, which is something that we've seen, the last several months, not just in the month of April. This just happens to be highlighted this way with this particular development. But again, you're telling the story through data, through interactive data to your client. What does it mean in terms of fresh or stale? Well, again, click on it to understand. Any property that's been sitting on the market for 16, 18, 24 weeks, when you get into the blues and the purples, then at this point in this market, if you're seeing blue and purple pinpoints on this map, the question you should be asking is, what's wrong with it, right? In this case, we only have one active listing, and it's in the 0 to 2 week stage because it's so new. There are no other listings to speak of. So this further explains the inventory and maybe a little bit of the urgency that buyers need to move with to find a property and place an offer. You'll have information about selling pace, so you'll know how quickly closings are happening from the time that a property goes on the market to the time that property is reflected as closed or sold in the MLS. Okay, so again, being able to see the timeline, helping your buyers understand and helping your sellers as well understand that closings are happening generally at a very fast pace. Understanding square footage, understanding rates of change between listed and recorded sales prices. Again, seeing how closing prices are trending higher than list prices in so many cases. And then also understanding how many days a property is sitting on the market before it goes pending. Okay, so not even 2 weeks. And there's so little data based on the little bit of inventory that's available. So again, this is just designed to further enhance your story, your explanation, your value proposition to the buyer or the seller, where you can now layer on your expertise, your professional guidance, and help lend the confidence and the credibility to take a transaction in this challenging market from list to close in a smooth and progressive, forward-moving way, okay, with as little stress to the buyer or the seller as possible. At this point, we have worked through the 3 main prongs of our CMA Builder. We've worked through the map with the criteria for pulling in properties at the various points, whether it be closed, pending, active, or coming soon. We then took a look at the price line. We plotted out properties on the price line, and we also plotted out some trends, whether it be highest trends, average pricing trends. We plotted on some additional estimate information to round out the picture of what's happening in the market. Then we looked at that 3rd prong, which is really going to happen automatically based on all of the changes, updates, and revisions, refining of criteria that we did in the first 2 areas. It's going to be this market assessment. This is sort of going to be the autopilot piece of your Core Present CMA. There's nothing that you need to do here other than really understand what each of these tiles means, so that if you're going to sit and have a conversation with your client, you can intelligently speak to them. So now I'm at the point where if I want to make any additional changes, I can go back to previous. I can go back up to this criteria bar, make those edits. But if I'm content with the product, I'm going to go ahead and finalize the CMA. This is where I'm going to click Save CMA Only. Remember, you as a listing agent or as a buyer's agent do have the ability to flow right into the next step of taking this CMA and inserting it into a buyer or seller presentation, which I do talk a little bit more about in one of our other kvCore training sessions from our kvCore bootcamp. But for today, we're just going to talk about the CMA itself. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Save CMA Only. It'll take a few seconds. When it does that, kvCore is going to want to know who to assign this CMA to, a client in your database. I've entered myself as a test previously, so I'm going to go ahead and select myself, and I'm going to hit Add. And it's letting me know that the report has been saved, so I can click OK. At this point, if I'm done, now how do I go back and get that report and send it out to my client? Or how do I get that report and pull it up on my tablet or laptop to talk through it with my client? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to go back to the main dashboard of Core Present simply by going to the top left, clicking on the Core Present icon, and this is going to take me to that main dashboard. If I scroll down, you'll see there's my 1704 Wood Hollow, last updated on April 19th, which is today. I've done a couple of things with this property, with trainings, so that's why it's here a few times and you see a few versions. But just in the last week, I've done several versions of this for training purposes. So you'll notice over to the right-hand side, I have the ability to present this on the web. I have the ability to create a PDF of this presentation and email it. or download it. I can send it right out through email right from kvCore, or I can go ahead and delete it. If I'm not satisfied with it, if it's no longer relevant, you can always just go ahead and click on this X to delete it and remove it from your list. Let's say that I wanted to go ahead and email out the CMA. What I want to do on the flip side of this is take you briefly through the client experience and what that would look like. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that email envelope. I'm going to click on, let's put 1704 Wood Hollow. Let's talk. So here is the market analysis on the condo for list. Let's meet and talk through the details and come up with a good list price. Excited for what lies ahead. Okay? I can click preview if I wanted to preview my message, or I can just go ahead and click send. Okay? So at that point, it's gone ahead and sent my message. Now let's turn the tides. Let's imagine ourselves as the client, seeing what that CMA experience will look like. So from a recipient's standpoint, I've gone ahead and received into my sort of dummy client profile a copy of this CMA. You'll notice that it's coming from the email address that I use, not my EXP email, but it's coming through as my alias email. And it's going to include the message exactly as I typed it. Here's the market analysis on the condo for list. Let's meet and talk through the details. Okay. Also references the subject line that I gave when I sent out that email message from Core Present. So now I can simply click on the link and let's see what happens when this presentation opens. Okay, so I'm being led to a literal presentation. Again, remember that there are certain pieces of this presentation that are pulling data from my profile that I have either built within kvCore or within Core Present. So things like my logo, my name, are all based on information that I updated on my personal profile areas. So here's our presentation for 1704 Wood Hollow. I can just click on the arrow at the bottom to move to the next slide. Here's the map slide. So while we saw all the criteria and could make edits right on the screen, obviously that's not how the user is going to interact on this screen, but they're going to get on the left-hand side an explanation of the criteria that was used. Okay, so the square footage, the bed count, the distance, right, the radius, and remember we changed our close date to go 9 months back. So that's all going to be reflected here on the analysis. The client's going to have the ability to zone in or zone out, zoom in or zoom out, just like we did, using the plus and minus on the Google map. And again, they can go to these pinpoints, click on them to get a little bit of information about what each of these properties is. So, okay, so if I click on this green one, this is our subject property, which you can tell with the orange house. So this is 1704 Wood Hollow. Here's 1909 Wood Hollow, 1905, and so forth. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit of information about what properties are being pulled into this analysis. Now let's see what those properties translate to in terms of dollars and cents. I'm going to click on that next slide button. Well, here's the price line. So right at the top, you'll see that I'm reminded of our legend, what the colors, the blue, green, orange, and red mean. Above the price line, as I scroll up and down, so above the price line, I'll be able to see all those pinpoints that took us from the map now to this view. And below the price line, I'll be able to see some highlights, whether I, as the agent, was highlighting highest prices, average prices, lowest prices, or as we talked about too, even the Zillow estimate will all appear here for the client to see. This is where the client can then go ahead and click on any of these individual properties to be able to get the full list on the left-hand side, where they can scroll through the pictures, Let's pick a different one because I think we've looked at that particular property a few times. So here's Ravens Row, where you can click through the property, where you can see the MLS details and description on the right-hand side. You can move through this whole list. You can stay right here on this screen to move through all of those comps. You can do one at a time. You can click on one and decide that you want to go back to the price line. Maybe what's interesting you most right now is what the highest sold look like and what the lowest sold look like. Okay, so you as a viewer have the ability to decide what you want to look at, what features draw your attention, and maybe what questions this prompts you to ask as you review the data. Okay, so that's this screen. Remember again, they will see all of the branding to you based on how you've built out your personal profile. Then I can click on the last button. It'll take me to the final screen of the CMA, which is again all of those tiles. Just like I showed you when we were in the edit, in the build mode, how you can click on the tile to see what graphic or what plotting you would receive to further detail the market, that the buyer or seller viewing the CMA is going to have the same experience. Okay, they're going to be able to click on any of these tiles. And what's really great for them is not only are they getting the graph, but they're getting the verbiage over to the left-hand side that gives further explanation. Okay, this is what you're looking at, and this is why this data might be relevant to this analysis. Okay? So this is what it looks like on the buyer or seller side of the equation, on the recipient side, what their experience is. So what probably adds that last bit of powerful punch with the CMA is that if you are in a situation where you have just emailed this out to your client for them to view, you're going to get analytics back from kvCore. kvCore is going to email this product to your client. They're going to let you know when it's been viewed, and they're now going to give you analytics about where the client spent their time, how much time they spent in total, what slides they spent time on, and even where they clicked on those slides. So let's take a look at that last great piece of functionality now. So I'm back at my kvCore Core Present dashboard. Going to go ahead and scroll down to where I had my presentation for 1704 Wood Hollow. You'll see it's last updated today, the 19th of April. And now if you continue to scroll over, previously where this little analytics icon was grayed out, now it's blackened, which tells us that we have data to view. So again, this is a scenario where you have emailed the CMA out to your client, and now before you maybe have a conversation with your client about the information contained there, maybe you want to try to give yourself a leg up on exactly where the client spent their time. What piqued their interest the most in the CMA that you sent them? Let's click on this analytics button and take a look at what it tells us. So it lets us know when the CMA was opened. It's going to let us know how much time the client spent reviewing that analysis. In our case, I sent it to myself, remember, as a test. So I spent a whole 26 seconds reviewing it, clicking through it to be able to generate this analytics for you to see. But what you're really looking for is first and foremost in these tiles at these measures is, did the client actually open it? Did they potentially open it multiple times? Maybe they got it at work, decided they wanted to spend a little bit more quiet, more focused time on it, went back and opened it again later on. And did they work through the whole presentation, all of the slides? In this case, we're only working on the core present CMA, didn't build it into a broader presentation. So we're just talking about those 4 slides. So this is telling me that the client, in this case me, did go ahead and view all the slides in the presentation. If I continue to scroll down a little bit, it's going to take me even further though in that experience. So now it's going to give me each page of the presentation, and it's going to tell me where the client spent their time. Okay, so average time 26 seconds per, I think that's actually per page. If you click on the cover, then there was that overview. Remember the map page, the big picture, what I like to call the price line page, and then the market overview with all of the tiles. So take a look here where there are two green click buttons. If I go ahead and click on that click button, look at what happens. It's actually going to give me an image of the screen, of the slide, and it's going to let me know where the client clicked. So I can see from over here on the right hand side, they viewed this slide one time. They spent 14 seconds on this slide, and they interacted on this page 7 times. So 7 clicks somewhere on this page. And if I go by the I guess for lack of a better word, infrared technology here, if I really concentrate on these heavily red areas, this is going to tell me where the client really zoned in and actually clicked. These lighter purple areas might have been where they scrolled their mouse around the slide, perhaps to hover over to get more information. Or maybe they're like me and they're just a mouse mover. But it's really in these darker red areas that will help you understand. So clearly on the map, what this tells you is that the client was very focused on the properties that were in closest proximity to our subject property. Then let's take a look at this other green click mark on the big picture scale, our price line. So take a look what happens here, okay? So if I look at this screen, if I look at the darkest colors to give me the greatest explanation of where the client spent their time, it's going to help me understand where their mindset is, okay? And it's going to help me frame questions to unravel the conversation, if you will, to really dig in and try to get a better understanding of their motivations, their priorities, and their needs in either going through a search or a list process. The other cool thing that Core Present is going to do, and especially if you are a lesser experienced agent still trying to get your sea legs about you in knowing what questions to ask, kvCore is going to feed you some of those questions. So it's going to notice, hey, one of the properties that the client clicked on was 2016 Ravens Row. So why don't you go ahead and, that's a great intro question. Did you happen to see that home, 2016 Ravens Row? Okay. Also giving you another question. They noticed that you clicked on the graph for the pricing rate of change. So prompting the recipient, did you have questions about that? Can we talk about that? So again, helping frame a conversation here, giving you tools that can give you maybe a little bit of an idea of where your client is so that when you start the conversation, you can help guide those talks in meaningful ways, okay? Helps you understand the focus and where the energy of your client is. So again, the way that you get to that is by going back to this, look for this analytics icon, and it should go from grayed out to black once there's data there for you to view. If for some reason you know that the client has viewed it, but it's still showing grayed out, just go up to the top of your web browser for this particular tab for Core Present and just refresh it. Sometimes it's just something that simple to go ahead and refresh. The other thing that I'll mention, just because as you leave here today, I absolutely encourage you to test out this product with a property that you know in a neighborhood that you know, even if it's your own personal property, to go through and build a CMA through Core Present, to send it to yourself, to experience it as a recipient, and then to go back and view the analytics. The one thing that I'll mention about the analytics is that if you are still logged in to this browser with your kvCore, you're going to want to use a separate browser to open the link. Otherwise, if you stay all within the same browser, kvCore will not interpret that the CMA has been opened or analyzed, and you will not get any of these analytics back. So if you're doing that test on yourself, that's no issue if you're sending it to a client, to their email address. But if you are trying to test it for yourself, that's an important piece to understand. So again, the way that you would start to build a CMA is you would go from your kvCore dashboard, you would head over to marketing, go into Core Present. Remember, Core Present is going to open a separate tab, and here is where you would either win the listing or win the offer. We took a tour of one property today. We built a CMA for one property. That process is going to be generally the same whether you choose listing or choose offer. But what's important is that you choose the correct scenario from the beginning, because once you're done building the CMA, remember you will always have the opportunity to embed that CMA into a bigger buyer presentation or seller presentation. That's why this choice at the beginning will be important. Okay, but in terms of the actual CMA build itself, it will be the same between buyers and sellers. So I hope that in the time that we've spent today, that you've seen the value that Core Present can offer, that you've seen how you have the ability to take your market analysis, your technology to the next level with your clients, that giving them something interactive, whether you're sitting with them in their living room going through this together, or you're emailing it to them for them to review on their own computer or phone, the technology heightens the awareness. It heightens the understanding. It heightens your credibility. All those things. It checks all those boxes and takes your overall client experience way beyond a simple CMA PDF. So I hope you're going to take this knowledge. You're going to go and experiment a little bit with a property that you know well, that you can gain confidence in the product for yourself and in your market, and then start to put this into practice with your clients. Best of luck and happy CMA building.